The Cardinals were undisciplined, unprepared, and embarrassed themselves on the road in a loss to Green Bay. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The Cardinals lose in an embarrassing fashion, 34-13 to Green Bay to fall 2-4 in the season, smack dab in the middle of the NFC West race. We'll talk about the injuries. There were a couple that were potentially pretty significant. We'll give some positives at the end of the show. But by and large, this was the most embarrassing output by a Jonathan Gannon-led Arizona Cardinals team. And it started quick, and it didn't relent. We saw, a little glimmer of hope midway through the second quarter into the first drive of the third. But the Cardinals constantly shooting themselves in the foot. The Cardinals constantly making mistakes. The Cardinals defense constantly allowing extended drives by the Packers through penalties resulted in a pretty embarrassing showing by the Cardinals. Now, there were a couple things that are out of the control of penalties, etc. Packers offense is good. The Cardinals defense isn't. It just isn't. And this isn't an excuse. This isn't any sort of, it's not Monty Osborne's fault. It's just the truth. And I don't want this to get to a point where you're blaming Monty Osborne, you're blaming Negrales, you're blaming Jonathan Gannon for what the defense looks like right now. You can, that's a choice. That's a decision that you make. This was never, and I've gone back and forth with this. I've explained both sides. I've discussed both sides. This path was to 2025 with the chance that if the offense could lead the charge in 2024, that they could be a potential fringe playoff team. But it was always 2025 as the goal. They're going to have all the money. They're going to have all their draft picks still. And the Cardinals defense right now is way beyond one player that would make an impact. Like if the Cardinals were to trade for Hassan Reddick, I know it's just a name, it's lazy. People continue to talk about it. I won't, but I'm just using him as an example. If the Cardinals trade for Hassan Reddick, the defense is still going to be bad. The cornerback room, Sean Murphy-Bunting played terribly today. Gave up 2 touchdowns. He had the interception that was thrown to him when a wide receiver slipped for the Packers, but he played bad. Starling Thomas didn't play great. Max Melton played fine. Garrett Williams played well, got beat for a touchdown on a broken tackle, but they were inside the 5-yard line anyways. This defense is bad. The pass rush. What happened to all the Dennis Gardeck and Zaven Collins truthers? We've seen this all before. Like the penalties, like 13 for 100. 13 for 100. The Cardinals had 13 combined first downs that were from the pass or run. They had 3 more first downs that were by penalty. So they had as many first downs as they did penalties. 13 penalties for 100 yards. And these weren't just little penalties here and there. These were penalties that were backbreaking after backbreaking after backbreaking, where the Cardinals were able to get off the field twice, but penalty extended the drive for the Packers. There was a punt that was fumbled, recovered by the Cardinals, offsetting penalties, one of which, obviously, by the Cardinals. That would have given the Cardinals the ball inside the 30, and the Packers go down and score a touchdown. The Cardinals have to play perfectly as it is to compete in games this year. And the fact that that was the showing, the undisciplined nature of this team, that is the exception to the rule. This was very uncharacteristic of this version of the Arizona Cardinals to beat themselves in the way that they did. They've got to play perfectly, and they didn't. They've got to play close to perfect on the road in a situation like this where they're not, constantly being their own worst enemy. They had opportunities today. They had opportunities, and they squandered all of them. 3 fumbles. I'll jump back in with that conversation in the positive segment, believe it or not. But they can't turn the ball over 3 times. They can't have 13 penalties. And they can't have the stagnant offense that we saw for the first quarter and a half. Opposing offenses are too good for the Cardinals to be able to get away with just punting on offense. Punting is maybe a poor choice of words because punting is an actual thing in the NFL. They played uninspired during the first half, save the last 7 or 8 minutes of the second quarter. This wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. It was a real stinker. And here's the thing. We saw this during the first half of last week. And then the Cardinals had the momentum. They ended up, getting 10 at the end of the second quarter. They needed a touchdown. Kyler Murray missed Xavier Weaver, throwing a timing route to the pylon. They had to settle for 3, and that was the last point they scored. They had opportunities, but they just couldn't get off the field on defense, and the offense couldn't string together enough without a series resulting in a fumble lost to stay within arm's reach of the Packers. And this one stinks. This one tastes bad. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. It'll be interesting to see when they have a little bit of extended week. They have an extra 24 hours because they play Monday Night Football against the Chargers at home next week. What that means for their mindset. They have a lot of film to watch that's not going to be fun to watch. So we'll see if they can bounce back and salvage their win-loss record Monday night against the Chargers. They do have 24 hours extra for some injuries as well, which is beneficial. Let's discuss that because there were some big names that went down on Sunday for the Cardinals. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay, hard and last longer. Gives you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and they're generics for up to 95% cheaper. No insurance needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety instructions. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by our friends at Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it by scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with reading, quizzes, discussions, and more, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Cardinals lose. Embarrassing. Not fun. Would not recommend having to experience that again. Please go to the YouTube channel, just Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on. Leave a review if you so desire. Injuries. Big one first. Obviously, all injuries are important because remember, these people are human beings and people like to, brush over that from time to time. Marvin Harrison Jr. Took a big shot, went down, got up, was wobbly, fell back down. It was concerning. Went into the blue medical tent, and then they brought him back to the locker room, and he missed the entirety of the rest of the game. Never got going with Kyler Murray. This was a concerning injury for Marvin Harrison Jr. Kyzir White, same thing, blue medical tent, back to the locker room, out the rest of the game. Mac Wilson, hurt, came back. Sean Murphy-Bunting, out with the neck for the fourth quarter of the game. I don't know how much of that was because the game was out of reach or if he was just unable to play. I'm recording this right after the game, so we'll know more throughout the week as it progresses. The only thing that the Arizona Cardinals had to avoid more than penalties shooting themselves in the foot is the players they rely upon to produce getting hurt. Now, obviously, you can't. It's the NFL. Players get hurt. It just shows every time somebody else goes down, it shows the lack of depth, especially on defense. With Kyzir White going down, Chris Barnes is not an NFL everyday player. He's not. And he got absolutely exposed over and over and over again today. Penalties, just getting beat. Jaden Reed's touchdown, he was defending Jaden Reed as one of the fastest players in the NFL. It's just not it. Good rotational piece. Good locker room guy. Not an everyday starter. If Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to miss some time, and again, we don't know. This is very, very, very early. I'm recording this 20 minutes after the game ended. The wide receiver room will be fine. That's not to say Marvin Harrison Jr. is not an extremely talented guy who's going to have a bright future for the Cardinals. That's not this. What I'm saying is, like I said before the draft, and like I said, if the Cardinals were to have traded back and not drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver room is going to be pretty much fine. Zay Jones will be back next week. Trey McBride, they've got James Conner out of the backfield, James Conner running the ball. The offense is going to be much more equipped to push through if Marvin Harrison Jr. misses time than the defense. Last offseason, and, he's the heartbeat of this defense in the middle of the field. Him and Mac Wilson have been, budding stars side by side with this defense, even though the defense struggles a lot, just, by lack of talent in the pass rush and cornerback room, namely. You lose Kyzir White, you got big problems. They've already lost B.J. Ojolari. Darius Robinson, you hope, will come back next week. But the one thing the Cardinals can't afford more than penalties and beating themselves is their players that they rely upon getting hurt. And that happened today multiple times. I don't know if this is, and I'm not a doctor. I don't know if you knew that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if the Cardinals were in the wrong cleats. I don't know if this was just, a perfect storm of injuries and playing poorly and all of that on the road. But it was bad. It was bad. So penalties, uninspired play, injuries, scariest environment imaginable. Every day, as you'll know. I used to say this a lot, during 2022 after Kyler Murray got hurt, and just throughout the last regime, it's my favorite Armageddon line with Owen Wilson. Scariest environment. All you had to say, scariest environment imaginable. And they were talking about the asteroid coming to Earth. Scariest environment imaginable. That's what it was today. This could not have gone worse for the Cardinals. And that's tough. Like, me, hopefully at this point, I don't say grandiose things when they're unnecessary, just for clicks or, whatever. This could not have gone worse today. Right? I think that's fair to say. This could not have gone worse. In the comments, mark this at 60, whatever, 15, whatever, mark it, comment on it. Could this have gone worse? Like, I just don't, and obviously everybody could have got hurt. Like, come on, let's not get silly. Let's not get silly season with this, but I don't think it could have gone worse. I don't. Rushing game, Trey Benson, 26 yards, leading rusher. James Conner, like the broadcast on Fox didn't even mention that James Conner wasn't in for the first series in the second half. Wasn't that weird? So James Conner, I was like, why is Trey? This is the most important drive of the game. Why is Trey Benson on the field and not James Conner? James Conner was sitting with a trainer trying to run up and down, and then, so it was a foot or an ankle or something like that. And he didn't look great today. It's the positive segment next is going to be short. So let's run these down. James Conner, 7 for 24. 4 catches, 22 yards. Trey McBride had a good day, 8 for 96. And those were important. Those weren't garbage time numbers. That was when they started to get some momentum. And then, it was a James Conner fumble or a Greg Dortch fumble. And the turnovers were tough. The last one was whatever. I mean, they were down 21 and, there was 6 minutes left or 5 minutes left. Didn't really matter. The Greg Dortch one hurt. That hurt because they were moving. Okay, so it's 18, and then you come down, you score, it's closer, but nope. Like that was just because I can't help but feel a little bit responsible for this. I think it was Friday's show or Thursday's show where I just said in passing, it's like, how do NFL players not fumble every play they're running the ball? There are large men coming and trying to punch out this ball. It's like your biceps are that strong that you're able just to hold the ball between your hand or your forearm and your bicep, and you don't fumble the ball. And the Cardinals fumble 3 times today. Locked on Cardinals, your team every dang day. Today's episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Listen, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has the daily fantasy sports, market cornered, in my opinion. You just pick more or less than their projected stats, going up to 100 times your cheese, man. Here's the thing. When it comes to PrizePicks, there are myriad things that they have set up for you for success. One of them is you can do an entry in 60 seconds or less. You can do all kinds of sports. Obviously, it's NFL season. If somebody gets hurt, they call it a reboot. So say somebody gets hurt early in a game and you have it as one of your 2 to 6 picks. It's called a reboot, and they just take it away as if you didn't even do it. So say if somebody gets injured early in a game, you don't get penalized for it. PrizePicks puts its member first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quickly as 15 minutes, man. It is absolutely insane. Download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 off or $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Cardinals lose. Embarrassing fashion, 34-13. 3 turnovers, 10 penalties, or 13 penalties. They had as many penalties as first downs. Not great. Not good. Kyzir White hurt. Marvin Harrison Jr. hurt. Sean Murphy-Bunting hurt. Uninspired football. Now, with that, that's the exception to the rule. Okay, the Cardinals were the least penalized team in the NFL going into today. So you hope that this was a one-off. You hope that tape is going to be seared into the brains of all of the players, especially on defense, and the Cardinals will be able to bounce back from it Monday night against the Chargers. The positives. 1, Kyler Murray looked fine. Okay, he missed Xavier Weaver on the pylon. It was a tough ball between corner and a safety. He didn't want to get an interception thrown, so he threw it to only where Xavier Weaver could catch it or be incomplete, and unfortunately the latter happened, incomplete. Trey McBride looked good. 8 for 96. That's the biggest positive for me was they found Trey McBride in space. And again, these, completions and receptions and yards were not in garbage time where he was like 2 for 20 and then they go down by 40 and then he catches 70 yards on one drive and a touchdown. Like that wasn't this. This was during important moments of the game. They were able to find Trey McBride in space, which is a good thing. Michael Wilson cut another touchdown pass, only had 2 receptions. It was a weird game flow game, It was a weird game flow. But it wasn't awful. And the offensive line protected Kyler Murray. He was running for his life a little bit, but no more than what a normal quarterback would be doing in this day and age. He looked fine. The offensive line looked fine. Now, while there are very few positives, if that continues, where Trey McBride was looked at as, tight end 1 in fantasy football going into this season. Kyler Murray threw for over 200 yards. He didn't make any big mistakes. They were fine. And that completely gets overshadowed by all the terrible stuff that happened by the Cardinals. I mean, whether it be penalties or, injuries or whatever it is. All in all, during this stream of consciousness post-game podcast, we're not in scary territory yet for the Cardinals in this season. We're in the foyer of the building. We're in the parking lot. And they're going to have to determine, especially if Kyzir White or Sean Murphy-Bunting, even though he didn't play great today, is forced to miss time on defense, if they're just going to punt or if they're going to try and add some pieces. It can't just be one because it's not going to move the needle enough. If it's just going to be one, punt on the season, have statistically the worst defense in the NFL, and go rebuild it next year. It's going to be very telling the next couple weeks. This is a game to forget. We'll discuss more throughout the week here at Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you on Tuesday.